So the 1619 Project is a project intended to destroy America. And it is pushed and being pushed by the New York Times into thousands of school districts. There's about 14 or 15,000 school districts in the country. About a third or more, 40% of them are using this 1619 Project, which was prepared by a non-historian and another one of these, in my view, racists with critical race theory and so forth. America didn't begin in 1619. And so you're supposed to dismiss 1776 and take this minor historical event in 1619 and project from there. And from there, they lie through their teeth that the American Revolution was fought for slavery. What are they talking about? The vast majority of Americans didn't even own slaves, fought for slavery. And so you have all kinds of historians with all kinds of backgrounds, affiliated with one party or another, or not affiliated with one party or another. These are people that have won all kinds of awards, Pulitzer Prizes and so forth, coming forth and saying, no, that's not history. That's not what happened. So why is the New York Times pushing it? Why do they push everything they push? And these Louis Farrakhan types as well. And so, of course, we get a reporter that asks America's governor, and that's what I call DeSantis, because that's what he is, who asks America's governor, why don't you allow them to teach the 1619 Project in your school systems? Because the media are always there to carry the flag and the propaganda for the Democrat Party. Their agendas are exactly the same. Let's take a listen, and this is from Rumble. Go.
I would tell them to read Florida statutes. We are required to teach slavery, the post-Reconstruction and segregation, civil rights. Those are core parts of American history that should be taught, but it should also be taught accurately. For example, the 1619 Project is a CRT version of history. It's supported by the New York Times. They want to teach our kids that the American Revolution was fought to protect slavery, and that's false. We know why the American Revolution was fought. They wrote pamphlets. We saw them dump tea into the Boston Harbor. We saw them meet in Philadelphia, and we have the records of why they revolted against King George III. And so it was the American Revolution that caused people to question slavery. No one had questioned it before we decided as Americans that we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights and that we are all created equal. Then that birthed abolition movements. So you can't teach history that's being used to pursue an ideological agenda. You can't teach that the foundations of our country were somehow evil. Our founders pledged their lives, fortune, sacred honor, and they put a marker in the sand. Not everything lived up to it right away, of course not, but every major movement in our country's history has gone right back to those core principles. So we want to teach history, all history. It's got to be accurate, though, and we are not going to be in a situation where we're taking George Washington's name off schools, taking down statues of Thomas Jefferson, and that's what those people who want CRT want to do. They want to change history. They want to delegitimize these folks, and that's not what we're doing. But don't let anyone tell you we don't want those subjects taught, because not only do we want it, we have it in statute that they must be taught.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, this guy is absolutely brilliant. You know, they can't get one over on him. He's gone to the best schools. He's a combat veteran, was an athlete. He's extremely well-read. I happen to know he reads all the time, late into the night. That's why he was on top of the COVID virus. He was studying the data that his scientists in Florida would bring to him. And that's why he said, we don't need to prevent little kids from going to school in classroom. They don't need to wear masks, because he was looking not at Fauci, but the real science and the real scientists and the real medical professionals who are actually on the ground doing the work, both here and all over the world. How do I know? Because he told me that. Fauci's a bureaucrat. Fauci's spewing bureaucraties, and now we know the whole CDC was all gummed up with the teachers' unions and all the rest. But I want to build on something the governor said. If we were truly teaching about slavery, we'd be teaching about what happened before people were brought to the United States. Who imprisoned these people in the first place? Who imprisoned them in the first place? Now, there were slaves from all over the world, but most in the United States were black slaves. Africans, but not just Africans, from the Caribbean too. What would happen is Africa was a very violent place, like so much of the rest of the world. And they had various African empires and tribes on the continent of Africa. And they were, in many cases, at war with each other. And they'd been at war with each other for decades, if not longer. And the practice was, in many of these areas, that when you defeated a tribe, you took their people as slaves. You took their women as concubines. Not just in Africa, in the Middle East, and the Far East, and other places too. And some of these tribes would sell their slaves, or the captured members of the other tribe, to other countries, or to pirates, or to people who were involved in the slave trade. Typically, you didn't have people from Europe, the United States, or the Mideast going into Africa, conquering tribes, and grabbing slaves. Typically, they were buying the slaves from other Africans brought into the United States. This is what one of the CNN commentators was explaining to Don Lemon when the issue of reparations came up in Britain. And she said, wait a minute, I believe in reparations, but if you want to pay reparations, it's not Great Britain. Now, on this issue of reparations, or this issue of slavery, we don't teach slavery. We teach it as if it began in America. That's very important that we teach about slavery in America. And I've written about it. It is a very, very bad mark on American history. There's simply no getting around that. But if you want to teach the history of slavery, there are fantastic scholars who are not political, not right-wing, left-wing, who've written chapter and verse on this subject, the names of the tribes, the names of the empires, what they used to do. Used to put them on people in cages in Africa, and to sell them to the slave trade and so forth. That often happened in our own hemisphere, south of the border as well. And of course, it happened in the United States at some point as well. In the United States, or America, had to grapple with this for a long time. And in the end, the Great Civil War was fought, the bloodiest battle America has ever fought, even bloodier than World War II for America. And no other country on the face of the earth, no industrialized country, as we call us, ever fought a war over slavery, ever. We did. And so which party was involved in slavery in this country? Which party was aligned with the Confederacy? Which party did the President of the Confederacy and all the generals of the Confederacy belong to? Which states were dominated by this party? It's the Democrat Party. And so as this CNN contributor said to Don Lemon, reparations are to be paid, she was pointing to these various empires originally in Africa, and I point to the Democrat Party. I point to the Democrat Party. People who fought against slavery shouldn't have to pay reparations to anybody. Many of them lost lives of family members, or they were horribly, horribly wounded, as they had limbs sawed off. And many people living in this country, their ancestors weren't even here. So if there are to be reparations, if there is a price to pay, let's get our history straight. And that's one of the things the Democrats do not want, real history. They want to create history, rewrite history, project their own ideology onto history, and whatever history they don't like, they reject. But the history of slavery goes hand in hand with the history of the Democrat Party and the Confederacy. The history of segregation goes hand in hand with the Democrat Party and its politicians and its Supreme Court justices. Those weren't Republicans standing in schoolhouse doors. Not a single Republican governor, as I've said. Not a single Republican governor supported Jim Crow. Not a single Republican governor supported all kinds of tests before you could vote. Not one.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.